Ladies and gentlemen, you are back in the landing zone, and welcome back. And the countdown has begun, everybody. We got quite a stacked show for you today, and I've got some pretty awesome guests with me too. So, co-host as always, Krista Runpucks is on the show, and I've got some new guests. Well, one not so quite new, and the other one happy to have on the show. Syrian Gaming is joining us from last week's show from the Destiny piece and the E3 piece, but a very special guest from the Super Deformed Games cast, John, otherwise known as Mr. Negative. Welcome to the show, everybody. Good to have you on the show, John.
Yeah, it's really good to be here, man. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate that.
So everybody, check the description below for links to the Super Deformed Games cast. Good old goddamn time with those guys. I do enjoy watching those folks, and John's pretty knowledgeable about the industry, and I do enjoy his lovely Twitter rants. He's one of my favorite to watch as I'm scrolling, doing absolutely nothing at work. So doing a couple of things today. We're going to talk about E3. That's the big focus of the show. But some major news came down today. This is Monday as of filming. So we're going to launch these throughout the week. But some No Man's Sky news happened today. Rumor, I should say. Definitely rumor. But a strange ARG-like thing that it caught fire like over a couple of hours. I was alerted on Twitter by a person of whom, did I use that word right? Of whom I will not unveil. We've got sources all over this thing, but apparently Hello Games is sending cassette tapes. That's what a cassette tape looks like for you millennials. Cassette tapes. 16 separate cassette tapes labeled 1 through 16 to 16 separate No Man's Sky Reddit moderators. With some other swag too. T-shirts, signed, postered, and some cryptic messages that, yeah, I was confused about this. As a matter of fact, talking amongst the other No Man's Sky YouTubers, they were a little confused and a little apprehensive to believe any of this stuff. So, hours later, moderators are coming forth. Reddit is exploding. Separate moderators are posting. They're posting. I can't even talk today. They're posting pictures of their tape that they received, but they're refusing to talk about what's on them because, for one, nobody owns a goddamn cassette player. That was 1995, and gosh, even before that, wasn't it? When were CDs invented?
A long fucking time ago.
A long fucking time ago. Along with that, nobody owns a cassette tape player. And then they're either NDA'd or they came to an agreement between the moderators that we're not going to reveal what this message is until they've put it together, because the consensus so far, at least what we know about it so far, is that portals are involved. Because one of the cryptic messages was data farmed from No Man's Sky, the game, alluding to portals. And then, really, that's it. Once they can put the puzzle together, we're good. And they're supposedly going to tell us what's on. I don't know, I'm confused, but just hours ago, I'm like, yeah, whatever, get the hell out of here, this is stupid. But then as the minutes go by, it adds more and more and more tangibility. There's more sources coming forward going, yeah, that's true. And we're a week away from E3. Now, last week's videos, we speculated this. No Man's Sky and Hello Games showing up at E3 for Sony's press conference, which would be a stretch and uncharacteristic of Hello Games these days. But, Syrian, tell me, what are your thoughts? And what's going on with Hello Games, and do you put any stock into this?
Well, I mean, obviously it's true now, because I know there was earlier today kind of like, well, maybe this person's making something up. But more than anything, I'm just really interested in knowing what is on those cassette tapes. And like you said, it seems to be about portals. And if that's the case, I'm all in. Like, I really want to see portals work in the way that not the way they were supposed to work, but just in some sort of magnificent puzzle. And if it really takes the whole community to figure this out, I would love to see that.
Yeah. So they're making them work together, which is indicative and a little bit ironic of, because multiplayer being holistically left out of the game at launch, which everybody's angry about, rightfully so.
Still.
Speaking of E3, and we're talking Sony a little bit later, but tell me, No Man's Sky, if they show up at E3, what would be acceptable for them to show back up to the show? If they were to come back to the show 2 years or 1 year later, for what's acceptable for them to do to, one, earn trust back, and two, make their game viable again, where everybody's like, well, shit, why didn't I buy this the first time around?
That's really tough, because I think it almost reached a point now to where it's kind of crossed that line, you know? Like, even if they were to come back and say, hey, there's multiplayer now, which is the big thing, I don't really know if that's enough for most people. I think majority of people might have crossed that point to where there's no turning back. But I guess we'll have to see. If they were to be at E3, though, I would think it would have to be multiplayer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely think multiplayer would change it, because there's been other titles that didn't have multiplayer, like last year or the year before, when Just Cause 2, they added in a multiplayer mod, and hundreds of people were playing that game. It's like one of the top games on Steam, just because they added in multiplayer to a game that, if it had multiplayer at launch, would have been amazing. So I really do think multiplayer could change a game, and especially for a game like No Man's Sky, because that was the expectation people had. That's what people were looking forward to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if you could actually see the people you were playing with.
We all thought we would
the
be.
same time of day.
Definitely, and that's a good point, because games can come back. I mean, look at Arma 2. Like, who was buying and playing Arma 2, at least to the extent that they were after the DayZ mod launched?
Mm-hmm.
That game was at the top of the sales charts for like years once DayZ became a thing.
I don't know if I see No Man's Sky coming back, simply because, at least on consoles anyway. I mean, well, first we look at Steam, right? Like, I actually just got curious a few days ago, and I looked at how many people were playing it on Steam, and I think it was peaked out at like 500, 400 people.
There was not a lot, yeah.
Which is abysmal. And then when you look at the amount of people playing, say, Elite Dangerous, I mean, it's like quintuple that. And of course, Elite Dangerous is launching on PS4 at the end of the month. And I've played both of them, and I mean, Elite Dangerous is just a better game. They both have their faults, they both have their high points, but Elite Dangerous, I think, is far more popular. And I don't see No Man's Sky coming back from this.
Interesting.
You know, and I just, it's not something that I really think is bound to happen. Now, I don't know, I don't know what Hello Games may or may not have in store for E3. But to launch some kind of huge revamp, I think Sony wants to quietly kind of wash their hands of that one and kind of forget it ever happened. You know what I mean?
That's not that's completely understandable, considering all the bad press that happened, just 8 months or so ago.
And it's not a bad game. It's not a bad game, but it is also in no way, shape, or form what was promised.
Oh, I definitely agree.
Interesting.
What's that?
I definitely agree.
Yeah, the guy said, hey, people will, Sean Murray says, hey, people will never run into each other, and we don't know what would happen if they did. And within 24 hours, two people arranged to meet, and they did, and they couldn't see each other. If very telling, go back and look at screenshots of the game from 2 years ago, and then compare them to screenshots that people put on Twitter. And
very different. Yeah,
it's like aliens, colonial marines all over.
It's exactly. And you know what? I think this was far more egregious, simply because there was so much hype around No Man's Sky. And you know what? I don't blame Sony for that.
No.
I blame Sean. I blame Hello Games for that, and I blame Sean Murray for that, because I feel like his reach exceeded his grasp with No Man's Sky, and the writing was on the wall for this one. And on SDGC and a few other, we tried, like, hey guys, people are like, oh, this is going to be Skyrim in space, but like 100 times bigger, and we're like, guys, Hello Games is a small indie studio. I think everybody needs to fucking check their expectations at the door.
Mm-hmm.
And then it released, and it was popular for a week, and so
Dead.
yeah. I mean, I've talked enough about it, but and I want to stress, I don't agree with any of the shit that Sean Murray was getting on Twitter at all. That was beyond
Absolutely,
the
yeah. It was a little
beyond
much.
the fucking go. Oh, it was a whole much. It was very, very much. And I mean, I feel bad for him in that regard. But then again, I mean, you promised something that you knew you couldn't deliver. I mean, I'm not sure what he was expecting to have happen. I don't know. That's how I feel about it.
I'm actually hoping to see him at the show. It's like, hey, come on, give me an interview. I think people want to hear from you finally, now that you shaved and you look somewhat healthy again, now that you've exited crunch time. And
a big interview.
I would love that. So if you're watching, you know,
I feel like at least some of them will be there. As far as where and how to find them, I'm not too sure. Like, I don't see them going on stage for anything, no matter how huge the update would be, just basically because of the backlash. But I just expect some of them to be there. Like last year, some were there. It's just they didn't show any No Man's Sky.
So we're looking, and I'm waiting. But Reddit there's like 500 people concurrent visitors right now, not just the members, but right now on the, like I was just looking, and it's crazy. It's weird because anytime I do a No Man's Sky video, it gets at least 1,000 hits, if not more. The thirst, like I said, is real for No Man's Sky, regardless of the hype or the crushed hype, the lies or misrepresentation. It's strange how hungry people are for content or video or just somebody hating on it or whatever. I don't know what it is, but people want to watch this stuff. My channel was born of it, and it was just very strange how people are still hungry for this game. I
personally think people still have hope, because the mods in the past have brought games back to life, and there's still a chance of it happening for this game. If it's done by the developer or if it's done by mods, who knows? But there's always still a chance.
Interesting. So sit tight, folks. E3 is going to tell it all. We'll find out.
Believe it or not, I'm watching E3. I never thought